One of the big problems that many people have is that they've learned a word or a phrase or a piece of English and they understand it. When they read it, they understand it. When they hear it, they understand it. But when it comes time to actually speak English, suddenly they can't find that word or phrase. It's like their mind has gone blank. It's just disappeared. In this video, I'm going to just very quickly explain why that is and show you how British Stories solves this problem. Now, basically, when you learn a word or a phrase, you put it into memory. And the effort to find a word in memory and understand it is pretty easy. There isn't much effort involved. However, to find it and produce it in speaking, there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more processes happening in the brain. So it's a lot more difficult to do. And what this means is words have kind of a level of activation. Words that you've just learned and that you can understand but not say, we call passive vocabulary. And the reason they are passive is because they have very, very low levels of activation. That means they are very weak in your brain. And in order to be able to produce them easily and automatically, you need to make that much stronger. You need to give them more activation. This is not easy to explain simply, but let me show you how British Stories solves this problem. So let's just open up the British Stories page. It does it in two ways. The first is one of the training lessons, which shows you how to use this software, which you can download for free, Anki. And it shows you how to basically use that to learn vocabulary. And I'm just going to show you an example here using a single word. Let's just copy, which is a good one. Okay, let's go for million. So let's just make a new card with this for demonstration. I'm going to make a new deck demo. I've already got one called demo. Let's just open this one. And I'm going to add this new card. So I can do this like this. Million. Okay. So, we've learned the word million. We understand the word million, but we can't say it. We can't produce it. So what this means is that I can read this sentence about 51.1 million people live in England. I can read it and I can understand it easily. However, I can't say this. I can't produce it. What this software is going to do is, get rid of that one, it's going to force you to remember this word. About 51.5 million people live in England. And here this is quite easy. But what this does is this effort involved in finding this word million in your brain, finding it and then pulling it out, producing it, is going to make this word million much stronger in your brain. It's going to give it more activation, as it were. And with repetition, this word will get stronger and stronger and stronger. The more you're exposed to the word million and the words which commonly go with it, the collocations that million uses, and the more that you try to remember this word, the more you try to produce this word, the stronger it will get in your brain. Once it reaches a certain level, it will then become very easy to find this word and produce it. That's the first way that British Stories helps to solve this problem. But it actually, there's actually a much more advanced feature which is going to be more helpful. So let's open up a lesson. Let's go to Pluckley and Kent. This is one of my favourite ones. One of the key features of British Stories is that it teaches you common chunks. So, to show you what I mean, let's just open up the PDF for step 1. Just wait for that to download. So step 1 is a framed dictation exercise. And what this means is you have to listen to the story and you have to dictate certain chunks. And this is going to build your awareness of these chunks. It's going to put them in memory so that you can understand these chunks. So the Guinness Book of Records is given the title of Most Haunted Village in England to the village of Pluckley. What was this one? Which is around 30 miles south of London. These aren't good examples. By coincidence, I went through Pluckley today on the train. On there is, of course, a chunk. It looks so pretty in the January snow that it's hard to imagine it being haunted. This is the one I want. Interested. I decided to check it out in the library. Decided to is a chunk. The word decided usually collocates with the word to. So you do the framed dictation exercise. That is going to make you aware of this collocation, decided to. Then, when you've read the story, you are again being exposed to this, decided to. Every time you are exposed to this chunk, it's getting stronger and stronger in your brain. And then in step 3 and 4, step 4 in fact, this is where things start to get good. Which is the right one? This one. So we're going to copy this chunking script, as I like to call them, and we're going to add this to Anki. And then what happens, let's just get rid of this one. What happens is we now get this section of the story in Anki, and you'll see that this is this section here. And what I've done is I've closed out the chunks that I want you to focus on. It's these chunks which are really going to help build your fluency. And we're going to read this. By coincidence, I went through Pluckley today on the train. It looked so pretty in the January snow that it was hard to imagine it being haunted. Interested, I decided to check it out in the library. That's not the one I want to show you. That's not the one I want to show you. Get rid of that. Okay, it's not giving me the one I want. Just a second. Let's go back to this. Okay. That's not the one I want. The order that it shows these in is random. It's not the one I want. Okay, this is the one I want. So, we now have the phrase, the chunk, decided to, in our memory. And we basically want to build our knowledge of this. We want to make it stronger in our brain, more active, so that we can use it easily ourselves. So, we're going to read through this. By coincidence, I went through Pluckley today on the train. It looked so pretty in the January snow that it was hard to imagine it being haunted. Interested, I. Now what we have to do is we have to find this phrase in our memory, remember it, and produce it. I decided to check it out in the library. We check the answer, we see that we was correct. It is this effort, the effort that it takes to find the chunk in our memory and recall that chunk, find it in memory and produce it. It is that effort which is going to make this chunk stronger and stronger and stronger until eventually it becomes so activated in our brain that it goes from being a passive thing, something that you understand but you can't do yourself. It goes from being passive to active. And when it gets to that point, then you're going to be able to actually say this in conversation, or even write it, or anything, any kind of production. It is this effort to actually use something, to remember it, to pull it out of our brain and use it, that is going to make us be able to use this. And with repetition, the more you repeat it, the easier it's going to get. So these stories, basically the whole story is set up with these chunking scripts. So you are basically repeating the story again and again and again, a bit at a time, and you are recalling the story a chunk at a time. One bit at a time, you are looking for it in your memory and pulling it out. First it's decided to, and then out in the, top of, chance to, on the roads of Parkley. You're going to keep on repeating this and producing it bit by bit by bit. And it's this effort which is going to build your active English so that you can then actually use that yourself in conversation. So in summary, the frame dictation exercise basically makes you aware of a certain phrase and a certain chunk or a certain word. And in particular, it makes you notice the things that you don't know. This is a very powerful way to improve your English quite quickly, but I'm going to talk about that in a different video. Also, the shadowing exercises will give you more exposure to the words and the phrases and will build your knowledge and make them stronger in your brain. And then the chunking exercises is what is going to actually basically fix these words and phrases and chunks in your brain and make them active so that you can actually use them yourself. Okay, I've talked for quite a long time about this, and I hope that makes sense. This is not an easy thing to explain simply, but when you understand this principle that you learn a word, but it is very weak in your brain, so you can understand it, but you can't use it. But after a certain amount of exposure and a certain amount of effort, it becomes active. When you can really understand this principle, it's actually quite easy to just use English because you can focus your learning in the right kind of way. Okay,